New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rev Briz and Rev Z and their guests chat about current affairs, world events, spiritual principles, and any old they want to talk about. Based on the New Thought philosophy and ancient wisdoms, Ministers Talking shares a visionary perspective of the evolving spiral called spiritual living. Join us each week as we explore the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth and beyond.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Briz with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is Ministers Talking Shit for June 30th, 2023. We're grateful that you're with us. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here this morning. And please do feel free, drop your comments, drop your hellos, join the conversation, type something into that comment box when you get a chance. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so folks, here we go. Buckle up. Hold on. We got a heck of a conversation for you today because oftentimes big news breaks right after this program goes off the air. Z and I, we call each other at 10 o'clock and go, damn, did you see what they just announced? And this week, well, we got, it didn't quite happen that week. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court today because yesterday they made some groundbreaking decisions. And I will say there are a couple of big decisions coming today as well. One is on the student debt relief package that President Biden is pushing. There's a couple of lawsuits and the court has to address these things today because today's the last day of their session. The other one is a case here in Colorado, 303 Creative versus the state of Colorado. Much like the wedding cake case, this is a case where people are claiming they have the right to deny making a website for a LGBTQ wedding. So we'll learn more about that today. So we got cases coming down today on both the student debt relief and on LGBTQ issues. However, what happened yesterday was pretty big news here in the U.S. So, Z, why don't you fill us in? Tell everybody, if they haven't read the news yet, what happened yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure if anybody has not heard this story, I'd be surprised because the Supreme Court struck down the affirmative action rule. That the affirmative action first came into being back in the 68, right in the height of the civil rights, and trying to make sure that race, creed, color, everybody had equal opportunities. This case centered around conditions that they said at Harvard and University of North Carolina, which are the oldest public and private universities in the country, that they were not being fair by allowing certain traits or traits is not the right word, certain requirements to bring in minority students, and at that time it was specifically Black students, into these universities. And so that's it in a nutshell. They said that no longer applies. So we do not have to try to be an equitable country in terms of education. We do not have to try to make sure that our kids are learning in an environment that represents the world we live in. You can do whatever you want, pretty much. And I think we're in for an interesting ride on this one.
Yeah. Yes. When I first heard this, my thought was, oh gosh, here we go again. Right. Take another 10 years. Let's go back in history, another 10, maybe 20 years. And we're getting closer to that 1940s ideal America again, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because everybody's pulling up a quote by Sandra Day O'Connor, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. Just about 20 years ago, she was part of a reaffirmation of affirmative action. And at that time, she said, we expect that 25 years from now, the use of racial preferences will no longer be necessary to further the interest in student body diversity that's been approved today. Supreme Court believes that we've reached that point. And, we'd love to hear from you, folks. Has America reached the point where we won't discriminate against people of color in college admissions?
No. Yeah.
As a whole, as a country, have we reached that point of healing that we no longer discriminate against people?
Well, and the other part of this is most of the conversation has been around the education, but that affirmative actions was also used to diversify the C-suite, if you will, the senior executives in corporate America. And we all know that hasn't been that successful. Before we went on air, we talked about the Rooney Rule in football, same kind of thing. We know that hasn't happened. And so with all these things that have been put in place to get some modest gain of being equitable, now that signpost that says be fair, do the right thing, that's just been torn down, and God knows what the final outcome will be.
Right. Well, and even like, if nothing else, something like affirmative action, it puts people, it puts organizations, it puts companies, it puts institutions on notice that if you aren't doing this, there will be some repercussions. There will be some accountability if you're not treating everyone equitably and fair and equal under the eyes of, under the eye of the divine. Now, hey, do what the hell you want. We don't care. And that's really what it seems like. And they hide it. I read the entire ruling, folks, including dissensions and other statements, over 237 pages. I did not have a chance to read 237 pages last night. But in the majority position, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, quote, many universities have for too long concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice.
Wow.
And man, that to me just sounds like whitewashing the whole thing. Right there. We're gonna rip off Dr. King, and we're gonna make it. We're going back to the old ways of. Yeah, we all know this, but there has to be some enforcement of this, because our history has proven that we won't do it ourselves.
No, and here's another thing that's going to be interesting to see from my perspective. After George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and all of those things that happened 3-4 years ago, we came up with, we since then we've passed Juneteenth as a national holiday. We've established countless diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging committees and positions all over the country. But now the chief directive, if you will, of making sure that those things are taking place in the corporation, affirmative actions, has been shot down. I'm very curious to see how effective or what the longevity of the diversity, inclusion, and belonging committees and jobs and opportunities are going to last, because a lot of them were there to help with that particular law being equitable and diverse.
Right. We were talking about this before before the show, folks, right, that a lot of companies put a paper tiger in place and gave somebody an office and slapped a DEIB label on them and then gave them no authority and didn't follow the recommendations and all those things and continued to operate in their discriminatory practices.
Yeah.
So I don't see how this moves American culture forward, if you will. I don't see how this makes us a better nation, because it seems to me like a piece of spiritual, this is legislative bypass. We know it's happening. We know it's going to continue to happen, and we're going to turn a blind eye to it and leave no repercussions for those that perpetuate discrimination and leave no remedy for those that feel they've been discriminated against.
Yeah. And if anybody in their right mind, if you will, believes that discriminatory practices, discriminatory laws, and situations have improved so much that no one has to really look at it, that's a problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Our dear friend Linda's with us. Good morning, Linda. When former President Trump was running for office in 2016, my greatest concern was the Supreme Court. And I do believe it began before Trump ran for office, that Republicans and conservatives, let's say, and nationalists were looking to how do we win more seats in the courts, and not just the Supreme Court, but across all of our all the court system, the entire court system. And Trump put a few people on that court that are skewing the balance, it would seem. I've heard it referred to as a conservative supermajority on the court at this point. Now, there is good news in all of this, because I do see Trump appointed judges that are ruling against him in various cases and ruling in favor of things such as affirmative action. But there's been a long process of conservatives in America looking to influence and flood the court with ultra conservative judges, and we're now going to live with this.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
the tough part is we're not going to see the error of our ways for a couple of decades.
That's the scary part, right? We're going to have, just like we're doing now, we're going to have a bunch of individuals who are looking at this 5 ways to Sunday and trying to, make point, counterpoint, whatever it is. But it's going to be our grandkids that really feel the problems of this decision.
Yep.
10 years from now, 15 years from now, it's going to settle in, because they're going to be. I don't even know how you challenge a Supreme Court ruling effectively. Anyway, but there'll be some point counterpoints, and they're going to try to get some pass. Maybe they'll try and pass some new laws to how they do, and to start whittling away at that one. But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, Harvard, if I read this correctly, Harvard has said that they will continue with their policies in a slightly different form. And they kind of said, we get enough applicants, it doesn't matter. We get so many applicants to Harvard,
right,
that we could still pick the top, and we'll still ensure that we're educating people of color. And another aspect of this we'll talk about in a minute is the Asian population. But they've kind of said, we're going to keep going, and almost to say, go ahead, sue us.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's going to have to happen. Somebody's going to have to rise up and now sue Harvard for continuing to follow the affirmative action principles and their existing policies as unconstitutional.
Right.
And and we're going to end up spending a whole lot more money in a bunch of years. And the court will get a chance to rule on this again at some time in the future. We'll see what the makeup of the court is at that time. So it's going to be legally, it's going to go on forever, for quite a while.
Yeah.
In form, in realist terms, there are kids in high school today that are changing their choices about where they want to try to go to school. Realistically, there are people on education boards right now today that are looking at, okay, how do we implement a new testing schedule that ensures our white students get to the best colleges more so than those of lesser advantaged communities. This is going to, this gives racists and those that want to discriminate license to do so, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And you know, I applaud Harvard for that statement. And I think we do have some educators and education administrators that have been around long enough, and they understand the value of having a diverse environment, right? Teachers, students, you know, opportunities and so forth. And so let's continue to hold a vision and prayers that we have intelligent humanitarians running these organizations that are going to get, you know, as they say, walk the razor's edge. They're gonna get right up against it. So you can bring all your stuff, but we're gonna make sure we right on the line, and we're gonna continue to do what we know needs to be done to support the reality of life, which is this is an integrated, connected world that we live in. And if we're experiencing it now with all the crazy weather. When you start tinkering with one thing that you don't understand the whole gamut of, then you're gonna have a real problem.
Yeah. And just as you're saying, when you start tinkering with one, there are those ramifications that we don't anticipate. Again, another one we're going to watch is anti-Asian hatred and aggression and violence. Because if we really went on merit, most of these schools would be filled with Asian folk and people of Asian descent that are coming over, whether they're coming here for an education or whether they were born here of Asian immigrants. There is a much deeper, my perspective, there's a much deeper commitment to educational to educational mastery. That's the word I'm looking for. And if we go solely on merit, there's going to be traditional schools that have a long history in the United States that are majority Asian and African American with very few whites in them. And that's going to just cause all kinds of uproar. Why, right?
It's going to be, you know, because I've seen several of the newscasts asking Asian students about the bill, you know. I saw one today, and the guy said he was a straight A student, and he understands. He says, my knowledge and understanding is that, yeah, it may help a few Asians, but it's going to hurt every other minority, and I'm a minority in this country. So, you know, I benefit, but I lose at the same time, you know, because people are going to understand that this is a real issue. I mean, there was a story, and I don't want to get off this point, but I do want to make this known. There was a story that came out a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. It was on NBC and Reuters. Of the 500 and some odd members of the Congress, 100 of them, their families owned slaves. The current Congress. We're not talking about back any time anywhere else. Of the 500, I think it's 38 people in Congress, 36 people in Congress. Of that 536, 100 of them there had slaves in their family history, and they had Republicans and they had Democrats. It was across, you know, they did a good spectrum. But I mean, when we think about this affirmative actions, and we think about, we still have 100, and I'm not saying they all have crazy ideas, but there's some privilege there. There's some benefits that they gain from that. That is a real thing.
There's no question. Yes, that white privilege is absolutely a real thing. If anybody tries to convince you it's not, folks, just laugh at him and walk away, because you ain't gonna get there with anybody that thinks that white privilege doesn't exist. But that blows my mind. That's 20%. 20% of the legislative body have a family lineage of direct ownership of people. You know, the liberal in me, the woke one in me is like, why don't we just outlaw that shit? If anybody in your family line ever owned another person, you're ineligible to serve in Congress. You're ineligible to serve in the legislative body. You're ineligible to serve on the Supreme Court. You're ineligible to serve the American people if your family owns slaves. I'm sorry. I know that's not PC, but we got to change some of these things.
And I would encourage everyone to go out and do a Google search, find that story, and look at it. Because these are the underpinnings, and I don't know any of these people personally. I don't know what their stance is on affirmative action or any other kind of action. But what I do know in terms of affirmative actions was put in place to help those who were not as privileged as some others to have an equal shot at succeeding in life, to being successful. And when we have a direct picture here of 20% of the Congress in coming from a background, whether they had no idea at all, right? Let's just say the grandparents were ashamed and the parents were ashamed, and the privilege that they got from that, the money, the land, the jobs, the opportunity that they got from being slave owners, or their parents or grandparents being slave owners, is categorically a thing, right? And so we have to stop looking at these things so isolated. It's all connected.
Yep. Well, and just you saying that jumps into my head that, okay, affirmative action also becomes directly tied to student aid, because in many cases, students of color come from financially limited backgrounds or marginalized backgrounds and are more reliant upon our financial aid system. Now we're going back to a point where it's like, well, I don't have to have a financial aid system because we're not giving you guys any money because we're not letting you in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So schools can, and right, we're not going to see this in the big schools, folks. This isn't going to happen at Harvard or UNC or UCLA or any of these other places. It's not going to get that bad that quick in the big places because they're under too much scrutiny. But it's the smaller colleges. It's the regional colleges. It's the religious colleges. It's the colleges that are already trying to stay homogenized. I said that improperly, sorry. That are already trying to stay separate, that are going to be able to enact different things and different policies that just make it impossible for someone of color to get into that school.
Yeah.
And to me, this really feels like a giant step backwards and not a step towards equity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's a case. There's a case in my hometown involving my alma mater, Florida A&M University, and someone just alerted me to it the other day, and I haven't gotten all the particulars. But Florida A&M, some students from Florida A&M University in Tallahassee is suing the state for allocations of money where the amount of money that they indicated should go to a school per student was less than the money that they gave to students at Florida State University. Two universities in the same city, one historical black, one not, right? And you come up with, okay, for every student in your school, we're gonna give you, I don't know what the number was, $1,000.
$1,000,
Where
yeah.
Florida A&M got 5 and Florida State got 1,000. So I have to dig more into that. But here again is another thing. When you brought up the financial aid is what made me think about it. Here is another situation where the money for education has not been allocated equitably.
Yeah. Again, our friend Linda's with us saying the court members are following their personal beliefs rather than legal precedent. It definitely appears that way, Linda. I agree with you. I think it appears that way. I'm trusting there's something else. I always trust that the universe has a great ability to self-correct when humans make dumb mistakes. Now, again, we're going to have to see what comes today in the news and how the court rules on both these student aid and this anti-LGBTQ case. We're going to have to see how those play out today as well. And our job, if you will, as metaphysicians, our job as new thoughters, our job as spiritual people who believe in the oneness of all life, our job now is to remain even more diligent and, in some cases, even more vocal.
Yeah.
Now, right? Yeah, there will be protests on the steps of the Supreme Court. I think there's protests every day they're in session on the steps of the court. So it's not a matter of just getting out and screaming, we don't like this, we don't like this. This is now the time for no matter what our ability is, to be involved in maintaining that sense of equity, bringing a consciousness of equity to our conversations, and being willing to say, that's not who we envision our country to be. That's not how we envision the future of our country. I don't see how segregated schools and racially separated institutions are going to help us be a global partner to the rest of the world. Because the rest of the world's got a lot more color than they do white. Let's put it that way. I never looked this one up, but I'd have to think on a planetary basis, white is the minority.
Yeah. And this is the opportunity for everybody to begin to study. If you don't do anything else, become informed, read up on these things, and look at them from multiple different vantage points. If you're conservative, look at it from a liberal point as well. If you're liberal, look at it so that you get a full picture and you can make decisions and inform others from a more holistic point of view than for me to fall into my emotions and start railing because I'm a black man and all right, that'll do something, but it'll be more effective to have point and counterpoint to address and to get people involved, because we're in the same boat. We're all living in this country, and if it goes to hell in a handbasket, we're all going with it.
Right. Yes. Very, very true. I've always thought that was our dear friend Fiona says, holding highest consciousness for awareness of and action for universal equity. Exactly. Exactly. We have to be the ones, and New Thought teaches it, folks. Everything happens in consciousness first. We have to have a consciousness that this is possible, that this is active, that we are the ones to make this happen, and then the resources and the opportunities show up to allow it to happen, to make it happen. But we've got to hold that consciousness first. So we pray, and then we move our feet. We do our prayers, and then we call our legislators. We pray, and then, as our friend Linda suggests, we follow the money. we pray, and then we tune into the news.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yeah. We still have work to do, as they say.
Yes.
And we have to be vigilant, I believe. We have to be concerned, and we have to get involved. And we understand that people get involved at different ways, different levels, and that's not the point. The bee may be insignificant to the health of the planet, but we know right now that bees are being lost on this planet, and they're beginning to affect crop pollinizations and things like that will have a long-term effect. And someone looks at the bee and says it's insignificant, but that bee is very much an integral part of the food system and everything that we do here. And this idea is very appropriate for how we get involved with these legislators and life issues, I believe.
And I get a tough time believing that the bees give a shit who's got a few more orange hair follicles and who's got a few more black hair follicles. Right?
They just want some flowers.
they just want the flowers. It's the beauty of being human. We have minds to consider and contemplate all these things. And that's our greatest challenge as well, because that human mind can go astray. Yeah. And can take us to corners that aren't part of the natural flow. But again, like I keep saying, I believe the universe has a great ability to course correct. Yep. So when humans take us off course, the universe is going to find a way to bring us back into alignment, bring us back to that place. Okay, it's okay. Because we are all one. We deeply are one. I don't know, we have too much time to go into this, but in the pre-show, we were talking a little bit about sometimes how confusing it can be in historical records as to who truly is black and who truly is white.
Yes.
And things like the 1 drop laws that, if you got 1 drop of black blood in your body, you're considered black. You may look as white as the driven snow, but if one person in your history had a little bit of fun with somebody of another color, then that's, and all of that is human misperceptions. When I look at my brother Elzia, I see a guy. I see a bald man who's probably got it a lot easier when it comes to hair care than I do. I see a guy that's got a whole different experience of life that I can learn from. Mm-hmm. And I see a guy who's been successful in a lot of different aspects of his life, not in spite of his color. And yes, he has lived up to the epitome of that statement Justice Roberts makes, that he has met those challenges and can be judged on the content of his character rather than the color of his skin. Yeah. And I also recognize that he had to go a lot harder of a route than I did. He had to face a lot more of those challenges than I ever did. And I had the luxury, the privilege of being able to stand in the background and not have to fight the big fight, really.
Yeah, and thanks for that, because, that often enough, people don't understand that statement. They don't understand that reality. I would almost say every Black person of a certain age, and probably even still today, the statement was given to them: you have to be 10 times as good as a white person just to get an opportunity. And that number could be 2 times, 5 times, 10 times. That number varied, but there was always some X factor on whatever you did to say that you have to be X factor better than a white person just to get in the door. Not the opportunity, that's just to get in the door. Now, to get the opportunity, we may have to do some more X's behind that thing. Yeah. And people hear these things and they, oh yeah, that's a nice little saying, but it's a reality. And now with the affirmative action thing, we're gonna get back to 10 times, I guess. Maybe we have to go to 20 times, just to get the opportunity.
Yeah. There's so much more we could say, folks. We could go on for days and days with this, and what we know is there is a spiritual solution to every human problem.
Yes.
Right now, it would appear that the United States has a problem, from my perspective, with the Supreme Court, with some of the decisions that are coming down. We're only a year out from Roe v. Wade, and you look at how hard it is for women to get health care and especially reproductive care in many states across this nation. That's not affirming of life. I don't see yesterday's decisions as affirming life, and the right to live life as we see fit. I hesitate to try to predict what they're going to say today. I trust that as we go, the court will come back to affirming our lives, affirming the right to live and the ability and the equity to live together.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
All right, folks, we're going to get out of here for today. We thank you for being with us here on the New Thought Media Network. We got a full day of programming coming up today, as we do every day. Seems like every time I turn around, we're announcing a new program coming on this network. So, here's my schedule sheet. I like to make sure I don't forget anything. We've got so much going on. Sekou Writes with Be Your Own Heroes up next. Morning prayers at 8:15. Rev Melissa at 8:30 with the morning sip. Spanish language programming at 9 and 9:30. 10 o'clock, it's Infinite Possibilities with Louise Steinbach. We are the Just One You at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. We do have a new program coming in August on Fridays at noon called Wham! We Are Miracles with Shay Davis. You can look forward to that coming in August. Later this evening, the good news at 5 o'clock, and Pastor Reverend Michael Mangus will be with us at 6 for the fireside chat. It's going to be a good day. We have the ability to make it a good day, and I don't see any reason not to make it a good day. Do you, Dizzy?
Not at all. Not at all. Let's go get it done.
Let's go get it done. Hey, before we do go, folks, however, we're going to say a quick thank you to our sponsors and our organizational. Oh, and I have something really important you need to hear about. Check this out first.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ricky Byers, and what I want you to know is that on the weekend of July 14th, that's July 14th, 15th, and 16th, I'm going to be blowing up Salt Lake City. This is my debut there. I've never been there before. So, Reverend Cindy, look out. We're going to burn it up, baby. God bless. Peace.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle,
and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.
All right, folks, that's all we've got time for today. I want to thank you for being with us and wish you peace and richest blessings. Until next time.